Welcome back to Twin Football, the YouTube channel that covers the NFL, Premier League, and college football. It is Tuesday, May 20th, and let's go ahead and dive in with the news of the day coming out of the Etihad, which is Manchester City 3, Bournemouth 1, as Manchester City now get one step closer to clinching a Champions League spot next season. They now sit on 68 points, 2 points ahead of Newcastle, Villa, Chelsea, 3 points ahead of Forest. Going into the final weekend, they basically just need a draw away to Fulham, so we will see if they can go ahead and get that done. Rodri came back in the 80th minute. It is great to see him. He's been out since September with the torn ACL, the Ballon d'Or winner. He's going to be a great help for them in that last game as well in the Club World Cup. Hopefully he'll get some game time here in the States. But it was the last home game at the Etihad this season for not just Manchester City, but it was the last home game as a Manchester City player for Kevin De Bruyne. Fabrizio Romano sent this out earlier today that Manchester City will be building him a statue right next to Toni Kroos. I mean, Sergio Aguero there outside the Etihad for all that he's done in a Manchester City shirt. We said goodbye to Jamie Vardy a couple days ago when he played his last game at the King Power. KDB, Jamie Vardy, two icons in their own way over the last 10 years in the Premier League. KDB obviously fighting for that legendary status of one of the best midfielders in Premier League history. He only sits behind Keane, Giggs, and Scholes in terms of Premier League titles with 6. He obviously has the Champions League, big part of the treble winning team, one of only 2 English teams to win the treble. Obviously the 1999 Manchester United team, in both are in the Premier League era, the only other ones to do it. Couple FA Cups, 5 League Cups, couple Community Shields thrown in there as well, and an absolute icon of the Premier League. And this photo here that Fabrizio sent out is the iconic photo of KDB tying up his boots in the 70th minute against Aston Villa in 2022, the last game of the season. They're down 2-0. They need 3 points and a win in order to secure the Premier League title on the final day. Manchester City scored 3 goals in 15 minutes, including an assist from Kevin De Bruyne after he go ahead and laces up his boots. So that statue is going to be fantastic no matter what it is. He's one of the greatest Premier League midfielders of all time. It has to be said. Obviously came up. Chelsea had a chance to keep him. He went on to Wolfsburg and did great things there. He needed to take the challenge and go off on his own, get more game time. He did that. He ends up at Manchester City, and it really was a blessing to all Premier League fans that he did do that, because what we got to watch over the last 10 years has been nothing short of incredible. So it'd be cool to see what he goes on to do next. Obviously, I don't think he's going to retire, but where will he be playing his football next? We will have to wait and see. But a great career for Kevin De Bruyne at Manchester City is now wrapped up. One more game at Fulham on the weekend. But that covers the news of the Premier League. And so now we're going to switch gears over to the news of the NFL. It has been a busy offseason week here for the NFL. The NFL owners meeting in Minneapolis today and tomorrow to discuss some different topics. One of the main topics that people are waiting to see what they vote on is the ban of the brotherly shove or the tush push. This was proposed by Green Bay with some wording of you cannot push the offensive player directly behind the snapper who receives the ball in a forward motion in order to gain yardage. It's going to be very technical, and you open up the door for possibilities and tweaks. What happens if he snaps it a little bit sideways and they go behind a guard and they push him behind a tackle, or they don't directly snap right behind the snapper and he takes 2 yards out and then goes sideways? Can you push him then? And so there's a bunch of different ways and clarification that they're going to need to have on this rule change to be able to officiate it properly. Also, what's going to be the penalty. But the first order of business is whether or not you're going to ban it. And that requires 75% of the owners to ban it. We will see what the final vote is. I think it is ridiculous that they are looking to ban a play in the NFL that is used so infrequently. I often hear the comparison of the tush push to the shift in baseball that got banned after a couple of seasons. The thing that I feel differs this from the shift in baseball, where you had 4 infielders on one side of the infield instead of third, second, and first spread out there, is the fact that every team applied the shift when it was statistically beneficial to do so. A hitter definitely pulls the ball one way or the other. You're guaranteed it out there basically if he gets contact and doesn't, hit a home run or shank it basically from what he's normally able to do. You're basically guaranteed an out. It worked very well. It was very effective. And the statistics behind it really showed that for every team. This is only done by a couple of teams and only done well by one team. We've seen many teams try it. It is 0.0 something percent of overall NFL plays. Yes, it is a play that the champions run the most and are the most successful, but it still ran few amount of times in their playbook. It doesn't really ruin the game. Eagles players came out and even said, okay, they banned this. They're just going to run the QB sneak. We've seen it successful for years with them, especially when Jason Kelsey was there. You know why it was successful when they used to run it? Because their quarterback can squat 650 pounds. I don't know any other quarterbacks that can squat that much. So they don't really need a push. It's really just let him push everybody else. Obviously, the push from behind is always going to help. I think they'll still have success by running a QB sneak if this play gets banned. I don't like the idea of banning plays, especially plays that the champions use and are associated with. I mean, it's called the brotherly shove. That is only referring to one team running it. It's very specific and very targeted for me, and I don't like that. And also, putting in a rule for this is going to be very difficult. It could possibly create more gray areas in officiating. And what is the penalty going to be? How are you going to judge that you are pushing, you're not pushing? Even in QB sneaks, we see a little bit of this. That's going to make that play a little bit harder if the wording isn't perfect here. So I'm not a fan of the ban. I don't think it should even be up for vote. I also don't think it's going to affect that much when it does get banned. Again, not many teams run it. Even fewer teams run it successfully. And the team that really does, 87% success for the Philadelphia Eagles, they run the QB sneak. They'll get the yard maybe 75% of the time, not shaving off that much. And that's hopefully if the rule doesn't also ruin the QB sneak, which is a very important and great play. When they quick snap it as well, you want to have that QB sneak in there. It adds excitement. So I hope it doesn't get banned. We will have to wait and see on that one. The other big proposal for the NFL owners this week is proposed by the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions finishing first in the NFC last year at 15-2, but they clinched the division on their last day against Minnesota, who finished 14-3, but second place in the division and had to take a wild card spot. So the rule that they're proposing is after you've gone through the regular format and procedure of picking the NFL teams, the division winners, and the next best teams as wildcards, you then reseed based on record. So a team like the Minnesota Vikings, even though they finished second in their division, they made the playoffs because of their record being so good. They would get what would normally be a wild card spot, but now they'd be bumped up to second or third seed as they had the same record with the Eagles. So based on tiebreakers there, and they would host the playoff game being a second or third seed there. And teams like Tampa, who play in basically a terrible division, they get a lot of their wins from their terrible division, not many wins necessarily outside of the division, and they creep into the playoffs. They don't get a home game like we've seen over the last couple of years with the NFC South. And one of the hardest things from the NFL has always been, you have these teams playing so many divisional games and you have so many different strengths of schedule that it's hard to rank these teams. In the Premier League, you look at it and everybody plays everybody home and away. It's a very even schedule. If you have the most points at the end, you've obviously proven to be the best with the same schedule. The NFL doesn't have that, and you get some benefits from not having that. One of them being teams lower down who finished a lower position in the division last year should get an easier schedule than teams that finish higher up in the division. And that's why you see about 7 new playoff teams every year, because new division winners happen pretty frequently in some of these divisions due to the little switch in the scheduling. But I do agree that clearly Minnesota and Detroit were two of the better teams throughout the regular season. Obviously, they had some playoff difficulties there, but throughout the regular season, you knew they were a tough out. Everyone was picking them to to maybe do something in the playoffs, minus Sam Darnold. Obviously, is he going to turn back into a pumpkin? He kind of did there with those picks in the playoffs, but they deserved what they earned through their schedule and through their wins to get a higher seed. And so I would like to see this go through. It doesn't affect who gets into the playoffs, so I think it's still great because obviously you want to fight for your division. It gives every team a reason to play for. It's not like if a team starts 7-0, you know they're going to basically clinch the division or make the playoffs already, and you don't have to worry about it. You get to focus in on the competition within your division, no matter what the records are. Like the NFC South fighting for 9 wins to win the division, where the NFC North was fighting for 15 wins to win the division. You still got something to play for throughout the season. You get into playoffs, but you shouldn't necessarily get a home playoff game. I can get behind that. And so we will see what the owners do on both of those here tomorrow in Minneapolis. But a huge news week across the Premier League and the NFL. So thank you very much for joining us here at Twin Football, the YouTube channel that covers the NFL, Premier League, and college football. Europa League final tomorrow. Last match week on Sunday for the Premier League. And then we're into the off season there. Enjoy the football.